Today I am discussing the topic phylogenetic relationship, homologous sequence of protein and DNA. Phylogenetic relationship. ആദ്യം നമുക്ക് phylogenetic relationship എന്താണെന്ന് നോക്കാം. The study of evolutionary relationship is called systematics. By looking at the similarities and differences between species, systematics can construct an evolutionary tree or phylogeny, which represent a hypothesis about pattern of relationship among species. In evolutionary biology, the word relationship has a particular meaning which is key to understanding and using the tree of life. Phylogenetic trees come about through successive event of speciation in which one species gives rise to two. Is the study of evolutionary history and relationship among individuals or group of organisms. Evolutionary tree എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് ദ സ്റ്റഡി ഓഫ് ഇവല്യൂഷണറി ഹിസ്റ്ററി ആൻഡ് റിലേഷൻഷിപ്പ്. ആ റിലേഷൻഷിപ്പാണ് phylogenetic relationship. The relationship are discovered through phylogenetic inference method that evaluate observed heritable traits such as DNA sequence or morphology. ഈ DNA സീക്വൻസിൻ്റെ അടിസ്ഥാനത്തിലൊക്കെയാണ് ആ റിലേഷൻഷിപ്പ് നമുക്ക് കാണാനായിട്ട് സാധിക്കുന്നത്. The result of this analysis is a phylogeny, also known as phylogenetic tree, a diagrammatic hypothesis about the history of the evolutionary relationship of a group of organisms. Homologies and analogies. Homology. Homology refers to common ancestry of two or more genes or gene product that have evolved from the same feature in the last common ancestor of the species. When applied to nucleotide or protein sequences, homology refers specifically to this relationship due to descent from a common ancestor sequence. Homologous features are derived through the same evolutionary or phylogenetic origin. Homologous genes share a threshold level of similarities determined by alignment of matching bases. Homology is an important organizing principle of genomic studies. Functional genes often display homology across species. Evolutionary tinkering that destroy essential functions could be detrimental to the survival of the organism. Homology is distinguished from homoplasy, which refers to the similarities between structures that is due to common ancestry. The amount of homology between species may be used to determine evolutionary relationship and degrees of divergence. അടുത്തത് analogies. Birds and bats both have wings, while mice and crocodile do not. Birds and bat wings are analogous, that is, they have separate evolutionary origin but are superficially similar. Analogies are the result of convergent evolution. Analogies convergent evolution കാരണമാകും. Birds and bats did not inherit wings from a common ancestor with wings, but they did inherit forelimbs from a common ancestor with forelimbs. Homologous sequence of protein and DNA. ഇതാണ് നമ്മുടെ ടോപ്പിക്, homologous sequence of proteins and DNA. Homology describes the relationship between genes and how they are inherited from ancestors. A homologous gene is a gene inherited in two species by a common ancestor, while homologous gene can be Similar in sequence, similar sequences are not necessarily homologous. Orthologous are homologous genes where a gene is found in two different species but the origin of the gene is a common ancestor. If a gene is duplicated in a species, the resulting duplicated genes are paralogs of each other. Even though over time they might become different in sequence, composition and function. Homology forms the basis of organization of comparative biology. A homologous trait is often called a homolog. ആ ട്രേറ്റിനെ പറയുന്നതാണ് homolog. In genetics, the term homolog is used both to refer a homologous protein and to the gene encoding it. Homology between protein or DNA sequence is defined in terms of shared ancestry. Two segments of DNA can have shared ancestry because of their speciation event or a duplication event. Speciation event orthologs, duplication event paralogs. High sequence similarities might occur because a convergent evolution, or as with shorter sequence because of chance. Such sequences are similar but not homologous. Sequence origin that are homologous are also called conserved. സീക്വൻസ് DNA സീക്വൻസ് ഹോമോലോഗസ് ആണെങ്കിൽ അതിനെ കൺസർവ്ഡ് എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. കൺസർവ്ഡ് സീക്വൻസ് ആർ സിമിലർ ഓർ ഐഡൻറ്റിക്കൽ സീക്വൻസസ് ദാറ്റ് ഒക്കർ വിത്തിൻ ന്യൂക്ലിക് ആസിഡ് സീക്വൻസ് പ്രോട്ടീൻ സ്ട്രക്ചേഴ്സ്. Homologous sequences are orthologous if they were separated by a speciation event. Orthologous or orthologs genes are genes in different species that originated by vertical descent from a single gene of the last common ancestor. Significant sequence similarities and shared functional domains indicate that two genes are orthologous genes inherited from the shared ancestor. The pattern of genetic divergence can be used to trace the relatedness of organisms. Two organisms that are very closely related are likely to display very similar DNA sequences but between two orthologous. Homologous sequences are paralogous if they were separated by a gene duplication event. If a gene in an organism is duplicated to occupy two different positions in the same genome, then the two copies are paralogous. Paralogous genes often belong to the same species, but this is not necessary. The hemoglobin gene of humans and the myoglobin gene of chimpanzees are paralogous. Paralogous can be split into in paralogs and out paralogs. Split into in paralogs and out paralogs. Paralogs typically have the same or similar function but sometimes do not. Same function ചിലപ്പോൾ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഡിഫറെൻറ്റ് ഫങ്ഷൻ കാണിക്കും. Due to lack of the original selective pressure upon one copy of the duplicated gene, copy is free to mutate, acquire new function. Paralogous sequence provide useful insight into the way genomes evolve. The genes encoding myoglobin and hemoglobin are considered to be ancient paralogs. Similarly, the four known classes of hemoglobins, hemoglobin A, hemoglobin A2, hemoglobin B, and hemoglobin F, are paralogs of each other. While each of these proteins serves the same basic functions of oxygen transport, they have already diverged slightly in function. Fetal hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen than adult hemoglobin. Sequence homology is the biological homology between DNA, RNA, protein sequences defined in terms of shared ancestry in the evolutionary history of life. Homology among DNA, RNA, protein is typically inferred from their nucleotide or amino acid sequence similarity. Sequence similarity is strong evidence that two sequences are related by evolutionary change from a common ancestral sequence. Alignment of multiple sequences are used to indicate which regions of each sequence are homologous.